I really wanted to know, how did football begin for you?
Streets of England, Horfield Common, and in the streets. I mean, you're talking about just after the end of World War II. So you're talking about 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds kicking hell out of each other on concrete roads. One tennis ball, 2 goals. The ball goes that way into the goal. The game changes to that end of the road and back again. So you have to be good, seriously. And this is probably like some of the managers today who invent little training regimes. Well, we started these training regimes in 1950. That is the kids in the streets, When it got to the bigger aspects up on Horfield Common and the bigger ball, that was a different issue. The big boys came in then and they could bundle your way out. But it taught me a lesson. It meant that the bigger you are at that stage, the same way at that age, you could bundle people out of it, really. And that's where weight comes into it rather than skill. So in the street, the skill wins. Up on the common, the big bundles win. Taught me a good lesson, huh?
That is very interesting.
Very interesting.
So it was on the common you had discovered, and you signed for Bristol City rather than your boyhood club Rovers. But what was it like first playing in your hometown, playing professional football in your hometown of Bristol?
Well, it was you were always subject to the most scathing of admonitions. You'd come home and my brother would say, "Oh yeah, Steve, you did all right, but what about that goal that you missed in the 26th minute, or that sliding tackle?" So everybody is picking out one aspect of the game. Never mind the other 90 minutes. 30 seconds, you missed a goal, you missed a tackle, you bundled somebody over when you shouldn't have. And it always comes back to that 30 seconds that people remember. They don't remember the glory, most of them. They remember all the other stuff.
So other than being under that very localised microscope, what was it like? What was it like in general being a professional football player?
Well, I mean, it's to me it was a natural event, really. You came off the streets and then you became a professional footballer, and you went on. It was no sort of different than any other job, but of course during the summer, your wages got cut ruthlessly. So let's say you're on 20 quid in the playing season, you could have your wages cut to 12 quid in the summer. And if you got a job like I did with Sweps and you were earning another 14 quid, you were earning more in the summer when you weren't playing football, although you were getting the football fill-up, than what you were playing football. It was ridiculous, really. Wandering around thinking, I wish I could do this all the time, get paid by Bristol City and get paid by Sweps. It would be all right, that. It was interesting, though.
And what was it like being out there on the pitch with the crowds and all of that?
Don't notice.
That goes with it.
Don't notice them in the end. In the end, when you're walking out, you care about who's there, and if you miss this tackle or miss this goal, what are people are going to think, and that melds into like, well, I'm out there to play football, and you don't hear anybody, you don't hear the crowd. Seriously, you do not hear the crowd. It is that sort of that much of a fine perspective that you don't hear that background crowd. Of course, you hear the roars of the goal and all that kind of stuff. But when you're playing there and you're trying to figure out how to do this, how to get around the winger and all that kind of stuff, or organise the team, don't hear it. It's a strange phenomenon. Of course, the noise is there; it just goes blah 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 straight across you. There are other more important things in the crowd. Sorry to say that, crowd, but that's true.
No, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Now you played a very good standard of football. Of course, you even played against Liverpool, but of course we're at Exeter City, and you played for us. And what kind of memories do you have of Exeter City? Maybe games or teammates or?
Yeah, well, there were lots of good guys there in the Exeter team. Johnny Newman was a great manager to me. I like John. Not only had he a lot of sympathy and empathy for the players, but he was a good coach and a good manager too. And I do remember Bob Wilson, who used to live next to us down in St Martin's, is it, or just down the road. And his wife, Dot and his wife were good friends, and we got around together. There wasn't a lot of everybody's out on a Wednesday, that kind of thing that happens, but there's a lot of bonding here. The kids went to school, enjoyed the sea and the sand. In Exeter was a good time for us. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and if I had my time again, would I come back to Exeter? Well, that would be a hard decision because after playing in the first division, in which it was, the football was great, but the rest of it was ruthless. But Exeter was great. I've got fond memories of Exeter, and I used to coach. There used to be a military regiment stationed down here, I think, and I used to coach the regiment team. And we got to the quarterfinals of the Army Cup or something of that nature. But Dot and this I forget the name now, sergeant's wife were good friends, and I used to go down there sometimes to the mess on a Sunday and have a couple of beers. Happy days. But it's absolutely strange. But when you'd be in the sergeant's mess, and the sergeant major would come in, and it would be, yes sir, sergeant major, and it was all like, even though you relax a view to the sergeant major, not only did he rule outside, he ruled inside too, and I guess that's the army. But we had a great time. But the unit was at the time, I think they'd just come back from Ireland, or they were just going to Ireland during the Troubles, so it was a bit of a worry for them. But I used to come down and coach the regiment's team. Good on there.
And you run the sort of football community kind of stuff where you...
Do we have to do this all the way? It's got to be this hard, Steve. We've got to go back and do our drill after. Tough. We're soldiers.
Harsh but fair.
Yeah.
I noticed in there you mentioned other kids like the sea and the sand, and of course you made quite a big move going over to play in Australia, and I know you played a couple of years there, but you also made a contribution to the sort of culture of Australian football or soccer, as they call it there. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I had a couple of bad injuries and I was finished at the top level. I couldn't maintain the fitness of what we had at this level of football. So we had two offers. We had one offer to go to America. That was just a growing field then. My family's American background, obviously, but Australia was different, and it was great going out there, and it was great playing football. It's you were playing for Greece or for Italy or whatever. People were pretty sort of keen, shall I say, when it came to the local derbies and all that kind of stuff. And sorry, what was the other question?
It was to do with you studied when you were over there, and you worked in local government, and you were asked to sort of write about the nature of football.
And I was asked by the then Labour government, and that was Brian. Can't remember the Premier's name now. Brian Burke, and he was Irish, and he wanted to clean up soccer in Western Australia, and he was tired of this ethnic exposure, Greeks and Italians and they said, we want one game. It's a football game. It's for everybody. So he asked me to write a report, and it was called the Future of Soccer in Western Australia. And it was a bit of a damning report. It said, unless we get rid of this ethnicity between clubs, soccer is never going to improve. Never. You've got to dismantle the Greeks and the Italians and the Serbs and everybody else. And of course they thought it was an attack on their privilege, which it wasn't. It was all about football, and then the proverbial hit the fan, and it was, we're going to get you, Stacey, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, And it was a funny little time. The papers were full of it. But I had a phone call from somebody in the Australian Soccer Federation. I'm talking about the West Australian Soccer Federation. And the message was, Steve, really don't worry about all this, because this is the way it's going to be in Australia soon, and it is now, of course. And Australia was the clubs. It was of an ethnic origin, and there was no growth there. You couldn't do things. You couldn't have guys from Serbia and say from Greece or whatever way it was worked. And it was all, you're playing for the heart of Serbia, you're playing for the heart of Greece, you're playing for the heart of England, you're playing for the heart of Scotland, and all that kind of stuff. Well, what everybody involved in soccer wanted to do was to have soccer clubs who didn't relate to a certain ethnic majority or minority, and just have everybody run the clubs, end of story, so that we can filter it down into schools and colleges and all that kind of stuff. And in the end, it happened. It was the project was called the future of soccer in Western Australia. Don't know whether it's still in print, but it was back in the early 1980s. And as I said, it was commissioned by the state government, and I wrote that. and got a few messages on the phone. We will get you, Stacey. All that kind of stuff. Interesting.
But it's something you're proud of because you contributed to sort of inclusivity in Australian football, and that had a legacy.
Yeah, I'm very proud of it, and so are a lot of other people who are gathered around me to help me sort of push this thing through, because it changed Australian soccer, football, to what it is today. You know, if it hadn't been for that, we could have still been dragging along in the mud, dragged down by the ethnicity of it all. You know, and don't get me wrong when I say that, because, you know, I'm not having to go at any sort of specific ethnic majority or minority. It's just that if you're going to play soccer, the best players get to play for the best teams, and the best teams are neutral, out there, and out there. That's the way it is now. But back in those days, in the 1980s, it was, oh dear, different.
So you've had a very interesting and varied career and life, and so I suppose what inspired you to write the book, because it can't have been any small undertaking to put that together. So what was the inspiration behind the book, and what motivated you?
Well, the inspiration behind the book, I think, was when I went over and discovered my father. And he was living in New York, and he was American GI during the war, and Mum had me, married again, he married again. So I had a family here, the white side of the family, and I had this family there, the black side of the family. I thought, well, you know, I've got to find out what's going on here. So anyway, I hired a researcher, and we found him in New York. I went over to see him, met my brothers and sisters over there in America. And obviously, my goal would be to get my brothers and sisters here back to the UK to meet with everybody. That hasn't happened yet, but they have come to America. They have come to Perth, and I've gone over to America to meet them. And I've also been up and down on the my mum's side of the family here. She's long past, but you know, it's been an interesting experience. You know, trying to get them together and find out where your roots are. You know, and it's a bit strange because nobody in England is interested in football. In America, they say, America. Football, soccer, what's that mean? We're going to the ball game on Saturday. You come to the ball game? No, I'm not going to the ball game.
So it was very much, rather than sort of trying to tell your story about your career, it was more the inspiration for the book was about kind of just finding out more about your life, and suddenly there's a book that's come together. So I suppose my final question would be, for somebody watching or listening, how would you describe your book? What would your pitch be to them to buy?
To the book, it would be an interesting journey through the world of being a small black boy, growing up in a white world and playing professional football is basically what it's about. You know, and I'm quite happy and proud of what's happened and what we've done. And I asked my wife, and Dot would complain, oh no, they dragged us out to Wrexham, and then we went all here, there, and everywhere, and the kids, oh, don't worry about it, Dad, you know, it's fine, we love changing schools. So they had a hell of a time. But in the end, it's all about football and the people that have followed me in my football world. I have to give a big dollop of praise to my wife, Dot, who unstintingly, you know, did not complain about when we had to move houses, and she packed up and I'd have to go off, and she packed up with the kids, finished it all, got it stuff and came over. So a big thanks to her. I don't think I could have done it without her. She's a great little person, really.
Sounds like a great lady, and you'll be our guest at the club.
She is a great lady. I'll tell you now, she's still got a sting in her mouth.